from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight, breaking down a busy trade deadline for the Denver Broncos, as well as some of George Paton's comments to the media. And Ben, so the Von Miller trade, we talked a little bit about that yesterday. We also talked, we haven't got a chance to talk about Kerry Vincent Jr., who got traded to the Eagles for a sixth rounder. He's a seventh rounder for the Broncos, haven't played a snap. He gets a sixth rounder from the Eagles. And, of course, we also had to consider what the Broncos did the week before, adding Stephen Weatherly, adding Kenny Young. So pretty busy trade deadline all in all for the Broncos.
Like we said from the get-go, too, they're not really sellers. They were actually more looking to be buyers. The Von Miller thing was kind of a one-off, and then the Kerry Vincent thing was, you had a chance to upgrade a draft pick in a crowded room that's getting Ojemudia and Bassie back. That was the sole reason. So he trades Kerry Vincent to his buddy Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator over there in Philadelphia, and they upgrade a draft pick out of it. So all in all, I felt the trade deadline week was a pretty savvy one for the Broncos. They got players they needed that made an impact. We've already seen Weatherly and Kenny Young. They got a haul in draft picks for Von Miller, and they upgraded a draft pick in Kerry Vincent without him ever playing a snap. What's your favorite Kerry Vincent memory? And I'm going to say it's probably which rap album are you going to miss the most?
Yeah. Well, and I liked, because somebody even asked me on Twitter, like, well, why did you even draft him if you never were going to play him? And I was like, well, listen, you like a guy based on where your board is at, and it's the seventh round. Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of speed. There was certainly a mindset about this coaching staff of, hey, we can't have too many cornerbacks. So
you wind up with too many corners.
I mean, really. And at this point, you're even with the injury to Bryce Callahan, you're still in a position now with you saying Bassie and Michael Ojemudia coming back. And the fact is, maybe Kyle Fuller still has something left. I know there wasn't a lot of interest there. I know that there was conversations about maybe he be the guy that would get the most interest in the trade deadline, but it certainly didn't show up.
Yeah, there were no talks with Fuller. No talks. They weren't shopping him. They weren't shopping Gordon. All the speculation that you guys saw out there was people trying to drum up stuff to talk about and get these clickbait articles out before the trade deadline. The reality is they were pretty quiet because it was pretty quiet. They weren't really trying to be sellers, and they'd already bought the things that they wanted to buy on. So New Orleans did call about Teddy Bridgewater, but was told that that's our quarterback. We're going to continue going down that path with him. There were a few calls about Fuller and Gordon, but nothing substantive. And it wasn't going to be more than if people are trying to offer you seventh rounders for these guys, when you're going to get more out of the compensatory formula, what are you doing? You're negligent as a general manager taking that pick. It's just most fans don't think about the compensatory formula in that refrain.
Yeah, and there's a lot of narrative that gets thrown around about what they think this team should be doing. And if they're not doing this, then guess what? I get to move the goalposts again,
right? And
I get to talk about them. How George, 1 minute George Paton's doing a great job, and the next minute he's the worst GM in the world because now we get to move the goalposts. But I will say this, and George kind of talked about this in his press conference. He said it sounded very genuine. We're 4-4. We feel like this whole season's still in front of us. He talked to the leadership in the locker room. They seem to believe that they can compete and still win games without Von Miller. What do you think?
They just won one without Von Miller. So we know
five sacks and 19 pressures.
We know that they can do it.
I think it was a season high.
Yeah. Against a decent O-line, too. Now they had some people out, but it was still a fairly decent. It wasn't like they were, the Little Sisters of the Poor or anything. So I think that George Paton is riding the fence as best he can. He did what he needed to do with the Von Miller situation, but the rest of it, hey, I gave you a playoff mandate. I promised you I'd get you what you need. I've gotten you what you need. Go get me to the playoffs, and you can stick around. If not, then I've got a coaching search ahead of me.
Yeah, and again, you have to. They view these draft picks as currency. They view this as, hey, we get to the offseason and we have some pretty big decisions to make, especially at the quarterback position, whether that is pursuing somebody as a vet or trading up in the draft. So if you just know what George Paton and where he comes from, a lot of these moves tend to make sense. And I thought the way that he framed his approach with Von Miller was understanding as much as he could the temperature of the fan base and kind of acquiescing a little bit to how people might be upset about it. It seemed like he really weighed this thing out. He even joked that his son is still not talking to him because he's one of Von Miller's favorite players.
Yeah, that's That's one of those things. Anytime you have to move a franchise cornerstone as a new GM, it's a tricky situation. I thought George Paton navigated those waters as best he possibly could. I felt like the presser that he gave was pretty open, pretty genuine. There are some things that he can't say, and those specifically I think were the two coaching questions. But you could tell his tone about one person was very different than his tone about another person, something you wouldn't have gotten from maybe reading the transcripts. So I think everything we've been telling you here on Broncos Country Tonight came to pass. There you go. I mean, why would you go anywhere else?
All right. And a reminder, as always, just find us on BroncosCountryTonight.com, interviews, podcasts, and more. Final thoughts sort of on this and kind of where they're going from here. There's going to be kind of a lot of the up and down still for the remainder of the season. He says the season's still in front of him at 4-4. He's 100% right. They're going to lose games. They might even lose as soon as this weekend. But I want to see the response. I want to see the intensity. I felt like we got that against Washington. I know it wasn't the cleanest game, but I felt like we got some intensity, especially from the defense. And the offense, for all their faults, they were able to stay on the field a little bit more than they have. They were able to sustain some drives. They need to clean some things up. Clearly, they're not scoring enough points. But I felt like the intensity, that thing we kept talking about for the last few weeks, I felt like that was back.
Yeah, the defense looked much improved. Even special teams was quite good. It really is the offense that's holding everything back here. And so we're going to need to see an improvement from the offense. They're not going to beat Dallas scoring 17 points. So, we're going to need to see an improvement from the offense, put points up on the board. The rest of it is just excuses.
All right, for the next episode, we'll dial in on Dallas. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.